exposing 12 spine-chilling paranormal events, terrifying, cursed stories that can't be explained. Jessica Jameson had never been one to believe in ghost stories until moving back into her parents' old Maplewood home. Shadows clawed at the corners of every room, and the whispers of forgotten family lore thrummed like a hidden heartbeat beneath the floorboards. Only 8, Lily didn't know that the attic housed more than dusty boxes and faded photographs. In their solitude, the house began to awaken, but maybe it never truly slept. The first sign was negligible, a fleeting chill that sent a shiver down Jessica's spine. Lily would giggle, claiming to have seen a peculiar figure in the hallway. Just a trick of the eye, Jess reassured herself, but each laughter echoed against the walls like a mocking chant. Then came the letters. "I know you're here." A scratchy scrawl that appeared beneath a weathered floorboard one evening as Jessica dragged the vacuum. It felt like a dare. Her heart raced. Briars of dread tangled in her thoughts, twisting her sanity tighter. Why was she feeling like a stranger in her own home? That night, she dreamed of betrayal, her parents torn apart by shadows she couldn't see in a sense. It all felt surreal until the elevated horror came. Lily explored as she always did, her curious nature leading her into the attic filled with your ordinary family clutter until she stumbled onto hidden compartments. Lily's laughter morphed into squeals of terror, her small fingers shaking as she revealed fragmented letters and memento shards that belonged to a family long cursed. Tales spun of a vengeful spirit punishing betrayal, tossed in the air like poisonous seeds waiting to bloom. "Mom! Come quick!" Lily's voice sliced through the hush, drumming Jessica's heart to a frantic beat. The attic smelled of dust and something rotten. "What is it, honey?" She climbed the creaky steps 2 at a time, panic flooding her veins. There stood Lily, pointing at a dusty candelabrum. The trinket was inexplicably flickering with wavering light. A grotesque glow. The room seemed to breathe, then the ordinary turned sinister. Objects began to shift. A glass vase full of faded blooms lurched over on its own. It shattered, echoing loudly like a woman's scream. Jessica's own scream caught in her throat, fear wedged against her heart. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Late that evening, after a grueling shift at the diner, the skies loomed heavy above Maplewood, drawing shadows deeper. Jessica pulled into the creaking driveway, and a chill wrapped around her spine like icy fingers. There, just beyond the flickering streetlight, stood a dark shape. It was motionless, yet wholly terrifying. Her breath hitched, as it resembled someone she knew, someone too familiar, yet eerily wrong. Shivers raced along her arms as she squinted through the darkness. A single realization struck, heavy and cold, that made her heart thunder in her chest. An urge ignited inside her, one that screamed to protect Lily at all costs. She hurried inside, shutting the door firmly behind her. The latch felt like it held more than just wood. It felt like a fortress against whatever malevolent force whispered discontent outside. What would happen now? What dark truth awaited them in the distance? The attic echoed with conversations of betrayal preying on fragile memories, twisting them into something unrecognizable. And as night draped its heavy shroud over the old maple trees, Jessica pondered if they could escape what lay ahead or if they were forever entwined in this gnarled legacy. Jessica's heart thudded in her chest as shadows flickered at the corners of her vision, blurring the line between what was real and what was merely a trick of the mind. Sweat trickled down her back, mixing with the dread that clung to her like a damp cloak. The house, once her childhood haven, morphed into a prison of whispers and unseen eyes. "Lily?" she called, her voice quavering. Anxiety swelled as the hallway stretched out ahead, dark and suffocating. Silence swallowed her words, leaving only the relentless ticking of the antique clock in the living room. She stepped cautiously, every floorboard creaking like a tired old man waking from a deep slumber. The air weighed heavy, charged with something sinister, something that thrummed in sync with her racing heartbeat. As she reached the attic door, she hesitated, hand hovering over the knob. What awaited her upstairs? The thought enveloped her, a coil of foreboding tightening around her throat.
"Mom?"
A fragile voice broke the silence, and Jessica's heart stuttered, "Not Lily S." It was a childish voice, strange and dissonant, slinking from the shadows at the far end of the hallway. Jessica turned, her breath hitching. There stood a small figure, cloaked in tattered fabric, the dim light casting twisted shapes over its features. It was wrong in a way that sent icy echoes down her spine.
Her stomach churned.
This was not Lily. "Come play," the figure beckoned, tilting its head with haunting innocence.
"Get away from her!"
Jessica shouted, her voice unforgiving. She pushed through the fear, rushing towards the attic. Desperation fueled her steps, propelling her up the staircase. The attic was a cacophony of chaos. Dust motes danced wildly in the candlelight, illuminating a scene of unraveling horrors. Lily lay curled on the floor, surrounded by shattered memories, photos torn apart, letters with ink bleeding like old scars.
"Lily!"
Jessica reached for her, lifting the girl's small frame into her arms. But as she did, the air around them thickened, and whispers spiraled, rising above the sound of her heartbeat. "You betrayed us," the voices hissed, the walls vibrating with unholy fury. It felt as if the very foundation of the house resented their intrusion. "Mom, it's in here," Lily whimpered, her small hands trembling as she pointed towards a dark corner where a heavy old trunk lay, symbols writhed across its surface, alive with dark intent. The candelabre's flame flickered wildly, illuminating an apparition trapped within the lid. It was a face twisted by rage, a woman's face, gaunt and hollow, eyes burning with a fury that threatened to consume Jessica.
"Let her go!"
"You have no power here," Jessica shouted, but her defiance felt weak against the crushing weight of the spirit's presence.
The temperature plunged, each breath appearing as a cloud in the air.
Jessica felt Lily clutching her like a lifeline, nails digging into her arm. Just as Jessica was about to turn for the door, the trunk burst open, and the room erupted with blinding light. Shadows danced, howling like feral dogs unleashed into the night. As they collided with her, Jessica felt herself being uprooted from reality.
Was this it? Would they be swallowed whole by a legacy of betrayal?
Then a voice, ancient and sorrowful, broke through the chaos.
"You must choose.
Save yourself or save her." Jessica froze, heart racing. The weight of the decision pressed against her. It was a chance to fight, to sever the ties of the curse.
Or perhaps surrender to the depths of despair. The blinding light intensified, and just as suddenly it stopped.
Now, a hand extended toward her from the corner. The light revealed a silhouette with a familiar scent of home.
Jessica's heart leaped and then plummeted. What would she choose?
The echoes of the past whispered ominously, and at that moment, everything changed.
When the time came, what would she really sacrifice?
The door creaked open behind her with the squeal of rusted hinges, and Jessica sensed something sinister awaiting them on the other side. Would they escape, or had they merely awakened?
A deeper horror?
Jessica's heart raced as she turned away from the trunk, trying to shake the feeling of impending doom. The shadows seemed to shift around her, warping the attic's corners into grotesque forms. She tightened her grip on Lily, her little body trembling against her.
"Stay close," Jessica murmured, her voice taut with fear.
She edged toward the door, aware that every step was a gamble.
The air felt electric, almost alive, as if it hungered for them to linger.
Each breath came harder, and the oppressive weight of dread escalated. Just as she touched the doorknob, the whispers escalated, a cacophony of sorrow and rage that twisted her insides.
"You are ours!"
they shrieked, reverberating through the walls. Jessica flinched, fighting against the rising tide of terror swelling within her. "Lily, I need you to be brave," she said, and the girl nodded silently, eyes wide and glistening. They stumbled through the door, the hallway unfurling before them like a dark maw. Cold drafts surged into the space where warmth had just been, wrapping around them with chilling fingers. Every step felt wrong. Every shadow seemed to stretch and crawl, and Jessica could sense the eyes on them, lingering, watching, waiting. She forced her legs to move, the weight of their situation pressing heavily upon her chest.
"Mom, what about the lady in the trunk?"
Lily asked, breaking the silence with a quaking whisper.
"I don't know, sweetheart.
But we'll figure it out.
I promise."
But doubt knotted Jessica's mind, unnerving her more than the phantoms. The apparition had been so powerful, so furious.
Was it really gone?
A shiver crawled up her spine as she recalled the fire in those hollow eyes. Suddenly, the floor beneath them groaned, a deep, rumbling sound as unsettling as a growl. Jessica skidded to a halt, and Lily squeaked, clutching her mother's waist.
What is that?
Before Jessica could answer, the house screamed a groan that was not just wood and nails but something more primal, a wail that echoed through her bones.
She turned back, looking frantically for an escape.
The attic door was now a gaping maw, shadows swirling violently as if something restless stirred behind it.
"Run!" Jessica shouted, grabbing Lily and sprinting down the hall.
The air thrummed with electricity as if the house itself objected to their escape. Jessica could hear the low, rumbling sound grow louder, a terrifying symphony of anger and despair that wrapped around them like a noose. They reached the stairs, the wood creaking ominously beneath their weight. It felt as though the entire structure was alive, pulsing with fury. With one last frantic leap, they hurled themselves down the steps, but the house was not finished with them. A thundering boom resonated behind them. Jessica looked back just in time to see the attic door slamming shut, dark tendrils of shadow curling around the edges, sealing them in a prison of darkness.
"What's happening?" Lily cried, tears streaming down her cheeks.
"Hold on to me," Jessica said, yanking her daughter close. They rushed toward the front door, the hallway bending unnaturally before them, the shadows twisting as if trying to ensnare their feet.
With a final push, Jessica flung open the front door.
The night air rushed in, crisp and electrifying. But as soon as they burst through, a frigid gust swept past them, the door slamming shut behind them with an earth-shattering thud. The yard was darker than she remembered, the moon casting ghostly shadows across the grass. But Lily's face was pale, and Jessica's heart sank as she glanced around. They were outside but had yet to escape the horrors of the house. It loomed behind them, eerily silent now, like a beast lying in wait.
"Did we get away?" Lily asked, her voice cracking.
"I don't know," Jessica whispered, dread pooling deep within her gut. From the shadows of the porch, a familiar figure emerged, a silhouette eerily shaped just like the apparition from the trunk. It tilted its head, grinning with a malice that tore through Jessica's soul.
And before she could react, it called out, "Why did you leave so soon?" Jessica's blood ran cold. What other horrors lay waiting in the depths of the night? And as the chilling laughter echoed around them, a single question rang through Jessica's mind: was their fight just beginning?
Jessica's heart thundered in her chest as she stood frozen, the sunlight filtering through the trees casting eerie, flickering shapes around them. The silhouette laughed again, the sound ripping through the thick night air. It was a taunting, guttural chuckle that echoed in her mind. "Mom, I don't like her," Lily whimpered, pressing her small body against Jessica's side. Jessica's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt glued to the spot.
"Get back!"
Jessica shouted, instinctively shoving Lily behind her, as if that would make the shadow retreat. It took a step forward, and the darkness seemed to chase it, swirling around its feet like smoke.
"Did you think escaping was so easy?"
It hissed, voice dripping with malice. A chill snaked down Jessica's spine. She wanted to scream, to flee, but her mind was racing against the rising tide of panic. The yard felt smaller now, the looming house behind them almost closing in, as if a great beast were breathing down their necks.
"Mom, what do we do?"
Lily's voice trembled, her wide eyes filled with terror. We need to find a way to keep moving," Jessica stammered, trying to sound confident, desperately fighting back the dread that clawed at her throat. But the apparition only grinned wider, a distortion of joy that sent shivers across Jessica's skin. "You can't run from what you've awoken," it cooed, stepping into the pool of moonlight. Jessica could see it more clearly now, misty, translucent, with eyes like black pits. They dug into her, revealing depths of torment and rage. Jessica felt bile rise in her throat. She had to think fast.
"What do you want?"
she said, trying to keep her voice steady. She hoped against hope that showing strength would grant them some sort of reprieve. The figure leaned closer, and the air grew colder.
"I want what was taken from me. I want you to join me."
The words slithered into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts, taunting her with images of despair.
"Never!"
Jessica yelled, gripping Lily tighter.
"We want to join you."
The creature recoiled slightly, a look of shock flashing across its face before it laughed again, a sound that echoed with centuries of pain. A twisted fury filled the air as shadows curled and twisted, creeping dangerously closer. Jessica's pulse quickened. They had to get away. This way, Lily. She grabbed her daughter's hand, and they sprinted across the yard, the grass damp beneath their feet. Every step felt like running through molasses, as if the earth were trying to drag them back. With her heart pounding in her ears, Jessica glanced back. The apparition had followed, its ghastly form gliding over the ground, unmoving yet inescapably close. They reached the edge of the yard, the tree line looming before them, dark and forbidding. The woods were a labyrinth of shadows, but they had no choice. "We have to go in," Jessica shouted, her voice filled with desperation. "Mom, I'm scared," Lily pleaded, her small hand slipping slightly from Jessica's grip. "I know, baby. Just hold on." They plunged into the trees, branches snatching at them, clawing at Jessica's clothes as if trying to pull them back. The laughter echoed behind them, mingling with the rustle of the leaves. But the forest, something felt different. It was suffocating, thick and still, wrapping around them as the shadows closed in. Then silence fell, deep and oppressive. Jessica paused, catching her breath, searching for any sign of the apparition. She pulled Lily close, her heart racing. And then, a whisper floated on the breeze. "You can't run from me. I'm part of this place." Jessica's blood turned to ice. What had she stumbled into? As she stood in that suffocating darkness, the suffocating weight of fear pressing down on her, she realized they weren't just running from a spirit, they were trapped in something far older and far more sinister than she could ever imagine. "Mom? What do we do?" Lily's whisper broke through the dark, but as Jessica searched for answers, she felt the earth shift beneath her, a warning rising in the air. Something worse than the apparition was waiting in the depths of the trees, and they had unwittingly walked right into its grasp. What would they encounter next? Would their fight for survival open doors better left closed? The forest closed in around them, shadows twisting into nightmarish shapes. With each breath, the air grew heavier, saturated with the musty scent of damp earth and decay. Jessica glanced down at Lily, whose eyes reflected both terror and confusion, a mirror of her own feelings. They had stumbled into a world drenched in darkness, and the realization clawed at Jessica's sanity. "Keep close to me," she urged, squeezing Lily's small hand tighter. The silence walked hand in hand with their dread, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. She could feel it, something lurking just beyond the shadows, something watching and waiting. They moved cautiously, the foliage brushing against them like skeletal fingers, desperate to tighten their grip. Each snap of a twig beneath their feet made Jessica jump, every sound amplified in the thick stillness. "What is this place?" she whispered, voice trembling. There was no answer, only the oppressive quiet that swallowed her words. Eventually, they reached a clearing, but it offered no comfort. The moon hung high, casting a ghostly glow against the gnarled trees that stood like sentinels. And in that eerie illumination, they spotted a hut. It was small, rotting, barely held together by memories of what it once might have been. The door hung crookedly, creaking as though inviting them in, whispering promises of safety or perhaps a deeper doom. "Should we go in?" Lily's voice quivered like a frightened rabbit. "No," Jessica replied sharply. "We can't. We have to keep moving." But just as she said those words, the laughter returned, a cacophony of cruel mirth echoing off the trees. It was closer now, wrapping around them like a noose. "Don't you ever learn?" The voice was deeper, more menacing, leaping from the shadows around them. Jessica's pulse raced as she scanned the perimeter. The apparition was drifting back into view, its shadowy edges blending with the darkness, but something else stirred in the depths behind it. "Mom! What is that?" Lily pulled at Jessica's arm, pointing toward the edge of the clearing. Emerging from the darkness was another figure, this one more massive and distorted. Its limbs stretched and twisted in grotesque ways, adorned with tattered remnants of what might have once been a human form. Everything about it oozed malice, and the air grew thick with despair. Jessica felt her heart stop. As she took a step back, the ground beneath them groaned like it was alive, swallowing her fear and rooting her to the spot. "Run!" she shouted, but fear gripped her voice like a vice. Before they could move, the harbinger of dread lunged, an unfathomable darkness rushing toward them. Desperation ignited her instincts.
We need to make it to the trees.
Jessica pulled Lily close, hurling herself toward the safety of the woods, just as a chill wind blasted through, carrying whispers of those lost before they dashed back into the dark embrace of the trees, branches reaching out like claws. The laughter morphed into screams, the forest echoing with the cries of the damned. Jessica's breath came in ragged gasps, but she pushed forward, forcing herself to focus on the path.
Mom! The ground!
Lily cried out, panic lacing her words. Jessica's feet stumbled as she looked down, horror curling in her stomach. The earth shifted, revealing gaping holes, dark and ominous, like mouths hungry for them.
Oh God!
Jessica screamed, but there was no time to process. She yanked Lily out of the way just as a root shot up like a snake, twisting around a tree, eager to ensnare them both. Heart racing, Jessica pressed on, the fear consuming her thoughts. She couldn't stop to think. She could feel the entity behind them, its presence a palpable weight, urging them to despair.
Keep moving, Lily. Just keep moving.
Then, amidst the chaos, an all-consuming dread crept in again, the shadows coalescing around them as they plunged deeper into the trees.
Jessica felt the pull of the unseen thing, stronger than before, an invitation they couldn't accept. What if the forest itself was alive, and not just with shadows? What if the whispers were true? As they ran, the path twisted, transformed, and the trees began to close in, warping into forms of faces twisted in pain. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. They were trapped, surrounded by something beyond their understanding, and the shadows, they were closer now, crawling faster, rolling forward like a tide, promising horrors that never tire. What would they find at the heart of this living nightmare? Would there be a way out, or would they be lost forever in the dark? The branches slashed at Jessica's face as they ran deeper into the woods. The laughter twisted into howls, each one more monstrous than the last. It felt like the very air around them was vibrating with malice. The trees, once merely sinister, now appeared almost sentient, advancing inwards, their gnarled roots gnashing like teeth.
"Mom, I can't." Lily's voice broke, filled with panic. The child's legs were trembling, her small hands slipping from Jessica's grasp. "Just a little further," Jessica urged, her heart pounding against her ribs, a war drum of desperate hope. But the oppressive darkness clung like a fog, thickening, blurring her sense of direction. Was it her imagination, or were shadows flitting just at the edges of her vision, darting and weaving, always out of reach? Then, ahead, a flickering light fought against the suffocating darkness. "Lily, look!" Jessica pointed, her heart leaping. The light. They pushed towards it, two racing shadows in a landscape of despair. But even as they neared, doubt gnawed at her. The light had an eerie quality, pulsing with a deceptive glow that seemed to dance like flames in the breath of a winter night. The laughter morphed again, twisting into whispers that slithered around their ears, promising secrets better left unspoken. "Mom! I don't like it," Lily whined, pulling at Jessica's sleeve. "Just a bit farther, sweetheart," Jessica whispered, though her stomach churned with foreboding. As they reached the light, Jessica stumbled into a small clearing, a space untouched by the madness of the woods, yet marred by something glistening on the ground. Her heart sank. Bones, hundreds of them scattered like autumn leaves, white and bleached, entwined with dark roots. The air thickened with the stench of rot and something more potent, something ancient buried beneath. Lily gasped, clutching her mother's arm tightly. "What are those?" The flickering light surrounded a stone altar, carved with illegible symbols that seemed to twist and writhe before their eyes. As Jessica stepped closer, the ground beneath her feet thrummed, an urgency throbbing with a low, pulsating beat. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed into a roaring cacophony. Join us," the words echoed, pounding into her skull. Shadows writhed at the edges of the clearing, creeping closer, almost touching the light. "No!" Jessica shouted, stepping back. But the ground bubbled, shifting as if alive. "We need to go." The altar pulsed with a sickly light, and as she tore her eyes away, she caught sight of an object resting atop it. A doll. Its porcelain face, cracked and stained, eyes dark and hollow, seemed to gaze back at her with a malevolent awareness. "Lily, look away." Jessica cried, pulling her daughter with her as the whispers transformed into screams that clawed at their sanity, but it was too late. The shadows surged forward, writhing like serpents, hungry for the warmth of life. Her life.
Run, Lily! Just run!
Jessica screamed, breaking out of the clearing with her daughter close behind as the shadows chased them. Hungry and furious, branches lashed out at them, screaming winds swept around, threatening to pull them down deeper into the nightmare. They stumbled forward, breath quickening, the air thick with the overwhelming weight of loss and the screams of the lost echoing in their ears. With every step, Jessica felt their pursuers brushing against her back, felt the cold breath of the abyss as if the forest itself was inhaling her soul. And then, unexpectedly, a path opened up, leading to a ridge overlooking an unfathomable abyss. The ground was trembling beneath their feet, vines writhing like snakes, and at the bottom of the chasm, something stirred. Dark, indistinct shapes began to rise, forming into ghastly silhouettes that reached out with skeletal hands, eager for souls to claim.
"Mom!"
Lily sobbed, confusion mixing with terror.
"What do we do?" Jessica's mind raced. The shadows lurked behind them, the abyss loomed ahead.
Here, in this moment, she felt the suffocating weight of choices. There was no right path, but then, among the rising shadows, a figure became clearer.
Tall and unmistakable.
It wore a mask of twisted bone, grinning as if it held the answers to all her fears.
What if it wants to help us?
Jessica thought, but deep in her chest, she knew they were out of time.
Lily, I don't know.
We have to, but she didn't finish as the shadow lunged forward with ferocity.
What would it demand of them? Would they have the strength to resist, or would they become part of the darkness forever?
From the unending dark came an echo, a resonant promise that chilled her to the bone: you cannot escape yet. They stumbled backward, hearts racing, breaths quickening. The mask glistened under the sickly light of the altar, its eyes like voids pulling them in, promising safety yet draping them in deeper terror. The figure seemed to pulse with the very shadows, growing larger, stretching, almost as if it was going to swallow them whole.
"Mom!"
Lily cried, her voice tiny against the cacophony roaring around them.
"It's coming!" "No, no, no!"
Jessica shouted, grabbing Lily's hand tighter. "We can't let it." As if responding to her words, the shadow lunged again, its maw opening wide, revealing jagged teeth formed from branches and bone. This time it did not aim for them, it lunged at the chasm, toward whatever horror lurked within. But that didn't matter. Jessica could feel the impending doom radiating from the darkness that gaped below. The ground shuddered, violent tremors through the earth as if it too wanted to swallow them up.
"We have to go now," Jessica yelled, turning away from the abyss.
They sprinted, bare feet slapping against the moist earth, weaving through the menacing trees that seemed more alive with each desperate escape. Branches cracked underfoot, and roots snaked across their path, striving to entrap them. But even as they fled, the whispers crescendoed into shrieks, clawing at their minds, feeding on their fear like a predator.
"Mom! Look out!" Lily screamed.
Jessica turned just in time to see a mass of shadows writhing toward them, swirling like a cyclone made of despair. It was a living wave of darkness, hungry and demonic, but behind it, she glimpsed something else.
Figures formed in the gloom, some familiar yet distorted.
Faces twisted in anguish flashed before her, lost souls, victims of this nightmare.
"Stop!" Jessica shouted, clutching Lily's arm as if that could tether them to reality. "We can't look."
But the faces seemed to echo her desperation, their mouths moving in silent screams. Each one was a warning, a testament to those who had wandered too far and became part of this cursed land. The trees screamed, their bark peeling like flesh as the shadows began to solidify. An anguishing sound, like shrill laughter, morphed into a cry, burst from the depths of the woods, and suddenly, they were not alone. Countless figures began to rise from the shadows, drawn toward the light of their fear. They ran harder, splaying through the dense underbrush, heat radiating off their skin. Jessica didn't know where they'd end up, if escape was even possible. But she had to believe, had to push forward, if only for Lily.
"Hurry!"
she urged, feeling the shadows nip at their heels. Angered by their escape, the path narrowed, and Jessica spotted a sliver of moonlight filtering through a possible exit. She grasped Lily's hand, pulling her faster, heart hammering louder, louder than the murmurs closing in. Just as they reached the edge of the light, a figure stepped into their path. It was the bone-masked entity, its grin widening, the shadows swirling behind it like a storm. "Not so fast," it hissed, the sound slithering into their bones. "You are bound to the forest now. You cannot break free." The entity reached out, arms extending towards them, its fingers elongated and claw-like. "No!" Jessica shouted, raising her own arms as if they could create a shield. But in that too familiar dark, something opened beneath her, the chasm's edge, unseen, wide and hungry. They fell, the world turned as air tore at them. The faces of the damned whisked past in the blink of an eye. Jessica screamed, the sound engulfed by the shadows. As they plunged deeper, Jessica felt the coldness embrace them, wrapping around her like an icy shroud. The abyss seemed alive, whispering her name, inviting her to join the legion of the lost. Then, just as the darkness reached out to claim them, a blinding light pierced her vision, pushing back against the shadows, and simultaneously pulling them, and the static crackled around her, and for a heart-stopping moment, she couldn't tell if they had been saved or if they had wandered right into another trap. "Mom!" Lily's voice echoed faintly. Swallowed by the light. As the blinding radiance engulfed them, Jessica closed her eyes, a mixture of hope and dread swelling in her chest. When the light faded, they stood on solid ground again, but this time, they were no longer alone. A phantom procession lingered, a fleet of tortured souls, their hollow eyes reflecting a truth Jessica wasn't yet ready to face. Lily peered at them in horror. "Mom, what did we just see?" Despair washed over Jessica like a wave. "I don't know. We need to find a way out right now." But even as she spoke, the winds whispered through the trees once more, their malicious intent sharpening the air. "What if," a voice teased from the shadows around them, "what if you've come home?" In that moment, the forest rumbled, and with it, the bone mask re-emerged from the shadows, grinning wider than before, waiting for their answer. Could Jessica find a way to escape this damned place, or would it claim them both? The ground beneath them felt alive, twisting as the shadows began to thicken once more. Jessica scanned the faces around her, blackened eyes reflecting a haunting sorrow. "Stay close, Lily," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Mom, what do they want?" Lily's gaze darted from one ghastly visage to the next, confusion gnawing at her small frame. "I don't know," Jessica muttered, her resolve crumbling. The air was thick, suffocating, as if the damp forest sought to choke the last breath from their bodies. The darkness swirled in anticipation, edging closer as the bone-masked figure prowled, its grin deepening like a gash across the night. "Please," Jessica begged, trying to maintain a semblance of control. "We just want to go home." The shadow entity laughed, a sound that turned her stomach. It echoed off the trees, ricocheting like a gunshot. "You think you laughed? This is home. You carry the darkness within you now." It stepped forward, the space between them charged with malice. An overwhelming sense of dread enveloped Jessica as she dared to take a step back, but the ground felt trapped, unyielding. "What are you?" she demanded, knowing the question was futile, a whisper against a storm. The faces of the damned flickered, morphing. "We are the whispers of the past," one croaked, its voice like rusting metal. "We are the surrender of souls who refuse to see." "What does that mean?" Lily's voice wavered as she stepped closer to her mother, drawing comfort from the warmth of Jessica's body. The figure raised a skeletal hand. "It means you are not here by chance. You belong to us now. We feed off your fear." Your despair. It looked directly into Jessica's eyes, its grip tightening around her heart. "Welcome back." With a sudden rush, the world around them pulsated, trees bent under unseen pressure, shadows contorting into grotesque shapes. Jessica tried to pull Lily closer, but as her fingers intertwined with her daughter's, a crack split the air. The wail of tortured souls erupted, a crescendo blending into an unbearable symphony, drowning out reason. They were no longer just echoes of the past, they were alive, swirling in emotional chaos. Jessica felt the weight of loss, sadness, and betrayal press down like a vice. "Run!" she shouted, eyes wild, recognizing their only hope lay in escape. But where? The oppressive shadows enveloped every possible path. The wind howled, a banshee's wail, and suddenly, the parade of lost souls surged toward them, drawn by an invisible force. Jessica's heart raced. She pulled Lily into a sprint, breaking free from the momentary paralysis.
We have to find the light.
They darted through the thickening shadows, branches scraping her arms, tearing at her clothes. The screams of the lost seemed to seep into her skin, quaking her bones. They burst through a curtain of fog that had thickened around them, gasping as luminescent gray mist suddenly gave way to an eerie clearing. In the center stood a pedestal wrapped in twisting vines, adorned with the same bone mask, pulsing with malevolent energy. It throbbed, echoing their fear as if feeding off their desperation.
Mom, the mask!
Lily pointed, horror mixing with fascination.
It's calling us. No! We can't go near it.
But even as she spoke, Jessica felt something tugging at her resolve, a whisper in her mind echoing the voice of despair.
We have to destroy it.
The ground shook again with a violent rumble, sending immense vibrations through the clearing. A crack appeared, drawing their attention back toward the darkened forest behind them, shadows swirling like a storm.
We need to hurry,
Jessica urged, but the ground began to tear, the masked entity appearing in the dark, filling every corner of her sight.
What if the being cooed? What if you are too late?
Panic surged. The roots began to twist around them, snaking upward, spiraling to hold them in place as the forest roared with satisfaction. Jessica struggled against the roots, but they were relentless, dragging her and Lily closer to the bone mask once more.
Desperation clawed up her throat, choking her. Mom! We have to fight! Lily!
Cried, squeezing her hand fiercely. The shadows laughed, a cacophony of despair.
Never forget you belong to this place now.
As the mask loomed closer, its hollow eyes beckoned them forward. Jessica felt a terrible choice looming, something darker than anything they had faced yet.
What had they awoken?
The echoes of the past crashed around them like a wave, and as they tumbled forward, everything spun shadows claiming the light, pulling them into a darkness that smiled back with wide, horrific joy. In that moment, Jessica realized, escape was no longer the goal.
Survival against the forest's sinister embrace was the only chance they had left. But could they fight against the very essence of it that had seeped into their bones? And what lay waiting for them in the depths of that masked terror? The air crackled with impending doom as the roots tightened their grip on Jessica and Lily.
Panic surged through Jessica's veins, cold and visceral.
Fight, Lily!
She yelled, trying to wrench her child free. But the roots coiled like serpents, and the sounds of laughter echoed ominously in their ears, as if the very shadows around them were mocking their fear.
Mom, I can't.
Lily stammered, her eyes wide with terror. Jessica's heart broke at the sight of her daughter's frightened face, the darkness swirling ominously behind her, laughing at their despair. Desperately, she kicked and twisted, but it only made the roots tighten harder, cutting into her flesh. Then, a flare of hope sparked within her as she caught sight of a small glint in the mud, just beneath the surface of the pulsing earth, a shard of glass, catching the pale light of the moon filtering through the fog. If she could just reach it. Lily, hold on. She stretched with all her might, forcing her body to turn toward the shard.
We're getting out of here. Lily's grip slipped for a second, but Jessica yanked her back. Stars blurred at the edge of her vision as she managed to grasp the glass. Instinct took over.
Using every ounce of strength, she began slicing at the roots binding them. The sharp edge glinted frantically in the shadows, reflecting brief glimmers of potential freedom. The shadows writhed, furious at her defiance. They howled in pain, their laughter fading into screeches.
You cannot escape. You are ours.
With one final slice, the roots recoiled slightly, giving them a moment to breathe. Jessica tugged at Lily, and they tumbled backward, gasping for air as the loosened roots fell away like dead vines.
Run! Jessica shouted, adrenaline surging through her again.
They sprinted toward the edge of the clearing, but as they neared the trees, a wave of blackness surged forward to cut them off.
No! Not again.
Nothing made sense anymore, every direction was a blur, and every shadow threatened to consume them. The bone mask on the pedestal pulsed ominously, emitting a low hum that echoed the heartbeat thudding in Jessica's chest. It seemed to command the shadows, drawing power from their fear and from every soul it had consumed.
Mom, what if we can destroy the mask? Lily suggested, desperation colorizing her voice. We have to try.
Jessica turned to the pedestal, and the weight of that decision sank in.
Was it the only way? The laughter of the shadows still roared around them, taunting them relentlessly. Yet the realization of their power over such an evil was intoxicating. If we destroy it, we can break their hold. They'll fight us. Lily cried, her eyes darting around. Then we fight back, Jessica replied fiercely. Together. Taking her daughter's trembling hand, Jessica pulled her toward the pedestal. The closer they got, the stronger the oppressive energy became, the air thickening like fog wrapping around them. It was suffocating, wanting to claw at her lungs. Don't let go, Lily. Jessica shouted, pushing forward as the shadows swirled in rage, trying to force them back into the depths of the forest. With every step, the bone mask pulsed violently, almost alive, trying to drag them under its influence. Focus! Jessica yelled, and as they reached the pedestal, she raised the shard high, trembling with fear and determination. The laughter of the shadows turned to screams, and the dark entities surged forward, desperate to reclaim their prey. Jessica felt the energy of the mask pulling at her mind, but she couldn't falter now. This was their moment. Tears streamed down her face. We will not be yours, she cried, plunging the shard down toward the mask, the raw energy building all around her. Just as metal met bone, a blinding light consumed everything. Shadows recoiled. Jessica could hardly breathe, her vision distorting as the light tore at the darkness with an unrelenting force. But in that moment, just before the light swallowed her whole, a scrabbling noise echoed from the depths of the forest, something dark and ancient unsettling the air. What had they truly awakened? Just as everything disappeared, a chilling whisper floated through the chaos. You will pay for this. And then, silence. Jessica opened her eyes, slowly. The light faded. She blinked against the sudden brightness, clouded memories swirling in her head like a storm. She was lying on soft grass, a gentle breeze mingling with the muted sounds of chirping birds. The sun hung high, warmer than she remembered, casting dappled light through the canopy above. Mom! Lily's voice burst through the silence like the first beam of morning light. Jessica jolted upright, dizziness pulling at her. There was her daughter, kneeling beside her, tiny fingers gripping the grass. We made it! Lily's eyes sparkled with a mix of disbelief and joy. Jessica blinked again, flooding back memories of the darkness, the shadows, the bone-masked figure, and the suffocating weight of despair. She pulled Lily close, needing the reassurance of her warmth. We're really out? The words felt unreal. Yes, look. Lily pointed toward the edge of the woods. The trees stood tall but felt different, lighter somehow. The darkness that once twisted them seemed to have receded, as if pushed back by the raw sun. Jessica took a breath. The air tasted sweet, untainted. The distant memory of sorrow and regret drifted away with each exhale. Relief surged through her. We did it! Mom, I felt the light, Lily said, her voice unwavering, filled with a childlike conviction that ignited a spark of hope in Jessica's heart. You broke it! The curse! The shadows recoiling under the brilliance of that ethereal light brought clarity. It wasn't just escape, it was freedom. They had severed a bond that stretched back decades, generations in existence that held the past hostage in spectral chains. Yet, as joy washed over her, a flicker of uncertainty nestled in the back of Jessica's mind. But what about the souls? The ones we saw? Lily's voice trembled. They weren't lost. We helped break the hold on them, too. The weight of her daughter's certainty pushed aside Jessica's lingering doubts. Maybe, just maybe, they set something right. They stood together, a mother and daughter united against the light, with a soft breeze whispering past, carrying remnants of victory leaving behind the shadows of terror. Slowly, they turned toward the house. Maplewood stood behind them, no longer looming or threatening but almost serene. It felt lighter, as if it had taken a deep breath, grateful now rather than angry. The attic, once a nest of despair, was a quiet memory. Can we go home, Mom? Lily asked, her eyes bright with hope, reflecting the sun's warmth. Jessica nodded, a smile breaking across her face. Home it is, sweetheart. They walked hand in hand back toward the house, their hearts a little lighter, and the shadows no longer a part of what lay ahead. The world around them opened like a story waiting to be told, unmarred by the dark past they had faced. In the distance, the sunlight glimmered, celebrating the dawn of a life reclaimed. As they reached the door, Jessica looked down at Lily,
her vibrant spirit shining brighter than any darkness.
You ready for our next adventure?
Yes. Lily beamed, a radiant smile spreading across her face. Together, they stepped inside, leaving the tale of darkness behind, and stepping into a newfound future filled with possibility, with breaths of freedom mingling in the air around them. The past finally felt like a strange dream. They were alive, together, stronger than before. You need to subscribe now.
This is the moment to show your support, and you don't want to miss out on any of the exclusive stories coming your way.
Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let the story live on. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear from each and every one of you, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.
Let us spread the adventure.